Good morning. So today, what are we talking about? Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? Ceci here. Is anyone there? Hi, my name is Ceci. I'm based in Berlin, and I want to welcome you to Ceci, the podcast where you see what others see. In this, our first season, we're talking about colors. Good morning, Petra.
Hello, Ceci. I'm very happy to start our interview today. Our guest today is no one less than master hair colorist David Johnstone from New York. David was born and raised in Connecticut and New Jersey and studied forest and civil engineering at Oregon State University, but left school to pursue his dream and entered hair school, after which he went to New York City to start a job right away as hair colorist. During this time, he was also a freelancer in the film industry. Having split his time between these two different jobs for several years, the next step for David was to return full-time to salons to focus on color. Today you find David as master colorist at the Yves Durif salon, a boutique salon located in the Carlyle Hotel. He has been working for more than 20 years side by side with Yves Durif, one of New York's most celebrated and acclaimed hairstylists. As part of this dream team, David uses his talent to transform New York City's elite clientele into world-renowned beauties, and we want to find out the master's secret.
Sure, we want to know how he does it. So good morning to you, David, in New York City.
Good morning, ladies. It's a pleasure to be on with you today.
So we're going to go directly to the point. David, let us know a little bit more about you by telling us the meaning of colors in your life.
Well, I mean, it's color. It's a simplification to say it's everything because it's my career. But beyond that, color is something that I am aware of all the time, just because my eye, I think, is trained towards that. So, for example, in the solarium in my house, there's lots of plants and there's all sorts of different subtle shades of green and blossoms. Or up in the country at our farm where we grow flowers, there's all sorts of colors involved there as well. And those natural, organic colors inspire me, and I bring them into the salon in ways that can translate into color for people's hair. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
David, another question. Trust between a client and his or her hairstylist is very important because one cannot easily undo a wrong action. That is why most people have a hairdresser like a doctor. They stick to their hairdresser even after a faraway move. It can give quite some stress to find a new one if you have to. For you to receive this trust must be actually perceptible and give you confidence, especially if you have a new client in your chair. Can you describe the right mix of technical and social skills to win the trust of a new client? And in addition, can you tell us a bit more about how you became such a successful colorist?
Well, I think what is most important upon meeting a new client is to put them at ease and to not be, a lot of times things when there's two people can be antagonistic. And the point of being a colorist, and, I'm supposed to know what I'm doing. So I'm coming from a position of power and the client is coming to me for something. So that they're coming from a position of diminishment. Really what I want to do is flip that and become passive to their needs. And in so doing, I gain their trust. And then once I have their trust, we can start to move into figuring out how to negotiate what it is that they want. So it's really being a supplicant to them, not being a tyrant, not being a taskmaster, not sitting there saying or telling them that this is what I'm going to do, but gaining their trust in a way where they can tell me what it is that they want, and we can move through the vocabulary and establish what it is that they want.
David, this goes a little bit along with what I wanted to ask you. And I have to quote you now. You say, and I love this quote, "My favorite part of color is transforming people to what they have envisioned for themselves." This quote is not only fantastic, as I said, but it's not to be taken lightly. It sounds like magic, like you might have the ability to transform and understand how someone envisions himself or herself to be, and at least from the outside, and I think for that you have to be able to look into the inside, have a certain degree of sensitivity. So I picture you thinking and opening up to understand or reading the person sitting before you, where sometimes maybe this person before you might not even understand herself or himself and might not even feel comfortable in his own or her own skin. So how do you do this? How do you transform people in what they wish or have envisioned for themselves?
I think there's a couple of components that play into that, Cecilia. Generally speaking, when people get to me, they've heard about me, they were sent by a friend, they may even haven't been staying in the hotel, but the hotel has paved the way for them to have some sort of understanding of who I am. Given that, when we meet, there's a tremendous amount of reliance upon vocabulary, the vocabulary of color. And then lastly, but not to be ruled out, is, pictures. And importantly, pictures of what you might want or pictures of what you might not want. So upon meeting somebody, it's important to see them in their street clothes and have a quick conversation about what it is that they want to do. And yeah, obviously everybody's, for the most part, come in with color on their hair. So either it's a train wreck or they want something very, very different. And so very quickly in the consultation, you figure out the direction that we're going. Do you want more of the same? Do you want to go in a completely different value direction with it? Do you want to change the technique from a single process to highlights? Those kinds of things can be done pretty quickly. And then while that is happening, I'm also sort of reading the undercurrent of how they're saying that, the words that they're using to describe color and what they would perceive on themselves. Also what they do, if they have a job, if they have a large social life. There's all of this stuff getting thrown into a hopper, and it works in a way to spit out an answer at the end of the consultation as the direction that we should be going.
Yeah, so you were like a kind of a psychologist, like Petra was saying.
Yeah, very, very much. This is actually, it's the psychology end of it that really brings the great rewards and the really, full book, like being booked like I am, like, weeks in advance. Because the technical end, as long as I've been doing this for 35 years, the technique is there, the actual manipulations. It's the psychological component that really is the part that really makes you winning to them and them to you.
David, I'm not sure if you can identify with this, but actually I think you can. But during the pandemic, when a lot of people were stuck at home, people started coloring their own hair. And the reports about how people dyed their hair with not the best products and with YouTube instructions were hilarious. And the big run on appointments at the hairdresser after the first long lockdown showed the importance of having a good hairstyle. And when I talked to my hairdresser about this do-it-yourself hair coloring, he seemed quite desperate on how to repair these privately colored actions. He mentioned it would take him hours per person to repair the damage, if possible. Saying this, colored hair can actually look very unnatural and unhealthy even, and does not always improve the person's appearance really. What would you advise people who do not have a big budget but would like to color their hair?
Well, if they've never colored their hair before, as opposed to they have been getting it done in the salon and then circumstances arose whereby they couldn't do that anymore. Those are two different things. So let's tackle the first one. I've never colored my hair before, but now I want to do it. The simplest way to do it is to try and pick a color, a box, that represents something close to what I already have, but maybe shifts on the tonal spectrum. So to be specific, if I have medium brown hair and it's just normal medium brown, but I want to zing it up a little bit, I could go and look in the pharmacy and find something that was medium warm brown or medium golden brown or medium cool brown. All of those things would move me just a little bit. And in doing that, I could gain some confidence. Now, if you were someone who was doing your color before, and what I found that I did over COVID, I did a lot of Zoom coaching of my clients to literally walk them through it. Like, I'd be up at the farm and I had my computer up and they were on the other end and we would figure it out. And maybe they had a friend to help them. But the last part of this is the important part. I never, ever deny a client a formula. I would never mislead them and give them the wrong formula. And I just, ethically, that's just so gross. I mean, it's your information. I just happened to concoct it. So to answer, that's a long way around my saying, come in or call me. I'll tell you what it is. I'll tell you what to go and get. I'll tell you how to mix it. You can do a reasonable facsimile for 2, maybe 3 administrations before you're going to start to get in trouble. But two or 3 administrations could get you 6 months. And so you actually become empowered. You start to kind of figure it out a little bit. It's not a helpless situation. So those are sort of the 2 big ways that happened over COVID.
David, talking about empowerment, I think you would agree that the concept of attractiveness is a very powerful one. It pervades every aspect of society, and this is very strong and clearly to see in the US. And hair might, in most cases, turn out to be an essential element in this concept. Look like this, and then you will have this in exchange. And by this, I mean wealth, success, and so on. But a lot of your clients, though, are very strong, intelligent characters, and that says a lot about you in the sense that they do not only have beautiful hair, thanks to you, of course, but they possess also unique styles. You are known in New York and in the US to respect your clients' uniqueness and do not create copies or beauties out of a mold. So I have 2 questions. What can you say about attractiveness in American culture, and how do you avoid stereotypical images of beauty?
Well, I think the first one's the easier question to answer, because that perception of attractiveness is something that's kind of radiating out of the person. Even when, like, I deal with a lot of my clients' children, so they're, middle to late adolescence, and they're, they may be a hot mess inside, yet strangely enough, they have a sense of self. So I can somehow, it gets back to the psychology of this. I'm looking for cues. I'm reading social signals and psychological vocabulary in our conversations that gives me a definition of what they think attractive is. I can see it in the clothing, how they're sitting, by their interests, what kinds of activities they're involved with. So that's something for like a very young person. In someone that's older, and by that I'm going to mean, let's say they're professional, they're in the professional community. I think it's a function of how relaxed and it's not settled, but comfortable they are in their own skin. I mean, like, do they wear their clothes or do the clothes wear them? Are they, punctual? Are they relaxed when they come into the salon? Are they uptight? Again, much of this is revealed in a consultation where, what do you do? What do you do for fun? Do you prefer the beach? Do you prefer the mountains? All of that stuff starts to load into what the attractiveness is, because beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It's attractiveness on their terms, not necessarily mine. I'm just a facilitator. I'm here to help get that actualized, I guess is how I want to say that.
And how do you avoid these stereotypical images of beauty? Like somebody will come and say, I would like to look like this. And then you look at that and it's a total mess.
It's very easy to agree with that. First thing is, I always agree. Being confrontational in color does not work. And I'll say, yeah, that's a great idea. And what about if we did this as well? And then slowly bend that conversation to imply that the technique will change to suit them. So, yeah, I do Daphne Guinness's hair, but you don't need to look like Daphne. Let's do a version that ends up being your version, not the supreme contrast of white and nearly black. So it's everybody wants to be their own version. It's just getting them to understand that. I mean, I do have people that come in and say, I want to look just like so-and-so that I do, who's a meaty person on TV. And I can say, well, we can do a version for you. And that's probably the easiest way to say it. It's like, because the person you're talking about she's, 5'10", built like, what. She's got this amazing blonde hair. You're 63, you're 5'2", you're, 150 pounds. There's a big difference here. We have to do a version of that for you. So it's all getting them to understand that they can have that. They can reach the attractiveness that they desire and that archetype that they're looking at, but cast the mold for them, not for the person that they're idealizing.
Looking at, yeah, exactly.
David, listening to your answers, it's you hear it already, of course, in how you explain the process, of the psychology and interviewing your clients. So your work requires really a lot of serious dedication. And to me, it seems like a highly complicated job to create a piece of real-time art for the client in your chair. And from my experience in interior design, there are such great tools available nowadays to show design impressions and discuss those with the client before execution. And for you, this design process takes place in your imagination and in parallel in the imagination of the client's head, but you never know whether you visualize similar images. How do you discuss the hairstyle you have in mind with your client to get the best mutual understanding? And are there, meanwhile, innovative tools to show an impression of the end result?
Yes, those tools have been on hand actually for many years. They're primitive. But yeah, someone comes in and says, oh, what would I look like with blonde hair? And there are software packages where you can take a picture of them and then you sort of plop blonde hair on their head. So they're very rudimentary.
I know that for my kids.
Okay, but those exist. But really, it goes back to what I was saying before. It's in the process of the consultation and the vocabulary that we reach an understanding of what it is that we're trying to achieve. And I can't go forward until I have a very clear understanding. And then subsequently they understand that I understand what it is that we're doing. And that can all be assisted with, everybody's got a phone. We've got pictures of ourselves that we like. We've got pictures of our friends. We have pictures from our youth when we had those natural blonde highlights when we were 13 at the beach. We got pictures of celebrities, people we admire. Those are great tools. We also have pictures of people that are train wrecks that we don't want to look like. So there's lots of those kinds of tools, but it really is in the face-to-face one-on-one where the determination is made as to what's going to work. And I think it's important that I also bring up that while I am a colorist, I 90 some odd % of my clients are going to someone here in the salon for a haircut. So when a consultation happens, I've only been speaking in terms of myself, but the haircutter is in there typically as well. So it's a trio of people talking about an objective, and we're as a team really good at putting forward concepts and ideas for the clients to be able to visualize. So it becomes a little easier when you've got the person who's creating the sort of three-dimensionality. Actually, they're going to cut it, and then I'm going to do a bunch of stuff with the color. So those two things actually help the client get a better understanding of what's going on, because they don't usually happen without each other. Like there's lots of people who get haircuts and never color their hair. There's not that many people who color their hair who don't get haircuts. So that's an important piece of this to keep in mind here. I don't want to give them short shrift. So is that I kind of dodged you a little bit.
No,
but
that
kind
makes
of
total sense. And this is like when I hear you, it's like a teamwork, but it's also
very
like
much
one-on-one, so professional, same level of technicality, and expertise. But what happens when you have to delegate the work to somebody else, or you're teaching someone? When does the time or the right time arrives when you can say, okay, you can go?
When we teach here at the salon, Yves and I both feel you really can't start to touch people if you can't give a good consultation. Like if you can't figure out how to divine what the client wants and then subsequently communicate back the way to get there for the client, well, then you can't really start doing too much because they don't know what's happening. And that sets up a really, really fraught scenario where I didn't know it was going to look like this. And you lost, you lost a client.
And then and it goes as far as somebody washing in a wrong way, the hair. Because,
yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. Sure. You can wreck it at the sink. I could have spent an hour and a half on somebody, 2 hours on somebody. And if the person at the sink isn't working in tandem with me and they use something wrong, they can wreck it. I mean, I did all the work and they can wreck it in a matter of, a minute. And that doesn't happen here. But I can remember times in my career early on where things like that did happen.
Yeah, that happens.
35 years, I've had it all happen.
Very often in a lot of salons, that they just put the apprentice to wash the hair and it's all over.
You are, I full confession, I am nothing without the people around me who work with me. And they're my associates. They're not under me. They are peers. They are indispensable.
Wonderful.
They know they are, I can't say enough. Cannot say enough.
David, you are 100% a New Yorker, a city boy, no doubt about it. But you're also a nature lover. You even, as we've heard, have a flower farm, a colorful boutique of dahlias in New Jersey, right?
Yes.
In this sense, talking about nature and dahlias, is that the way you pronounce
it?
Dahlias. Oh, it's like in Spanish, sorry. And color. What does beauty of nature mean to you? You have been talking about it, but just very concise. What does nature and the beauty of nature mean to you?
Generally speaking, nature is always in some sort of harmony. Like when you look at a flower, even something that's been like highly bred by, it's been genetically modified but it's still got this harmony within it that is, whether the petals are lined up or the color saturations move from deep intensity out into a pale pastel or something. There's a sort of seamlessness to it that is so admirable. It's almost like when you when you look at the bark on a tree. If you touch it, it can be very abrupt and gruff and all, but when you stand back and look, it's just this beautiful melange of color. So it just I find and receive great inspiration from nature and the way that it works with the subtlety of colors. So, for instance, in a dahlia, there's 40,000 plus types of dahlias out there. And each and every one of them has just this incredible play of color and hue and intensity that's just, it's unlike anything else. You don't see any hard lines. It's all soft. It melds in. It's sort of washed. It's not like photorealism. It's got this softness that I find is just really appealing to me. It's like the bark on a tree. I mean, to touch it is one thing. It's rough, but to look at it is this beautiful picture of all these subtle browns and grays and shadows and light that come into the salon with me. I mean, looking at pieces of wood and the color in a piece of wood is really, really a great inspiration for hair, believe it or not. There was a time when even I used to carry around those big keychain loops of flooring, like when you go to the flooring store and they'd have these big circle loops with all these pieces of wood on them. And we would use those to try and to inspire us to get color into hair instead of using swatch things from the color places, which are garbage. We're, using nature as an inspiration. So nature there's nothing like it. Getting outside and being affected in a positive way by nature is a really great inspiration.
David, tell me, you have a background in film, and maybe this is a second component to this inspiration of nature. You know about color grading and color hue and brightness and color correction, color matching, and so on. Have these also influenced you in your profession as a colorist?
Yeah, a lot. First off, I think it's important to know that there's two different kinds of color. There's the theory of color, which is primary, secondary, and tertiary colors. Then there's color in terms of the spectrum of light, which is kind of a little bit different. So
it's right, Newton against Goethe.
Exactly. So, and I think it's one of the reasons why I ended up doing so many people, even in the salon. I do a ton of people who are in front of TV cameras. and film cameras, because I do understand what it's going to look like when they're lit on set, because I'll have to go sometimes and visit the set to see what they bring up on camera to figure out what's going on with either what I did or what they need to do to light somebody correctly. So film taught me a lot about those kinds of things, the power of light and the quality of the light, whether, where it was in the spectrum, whether it was cool or if it was warm, and what that does to the end result, what's up on the screen or in your television set. So,
So these are two worlds, just to understand, because you are really guiding us very well. These are like two dimensions to color.
Yeah.
In a way.
Sure. What you see, and look, we've all looked at magazines and you see a picture, or you look at someone on a movie set and their hair looks gorgeous. And then you get a candid picture of them outside and they look terrible. Like, that's the power of light. That's the power of, photoshopping. That's the power of editing and mixing things to make it look a certain way. If I'm doing my job correctly, they look as good in real life as they do on camera. That doesn't always happen. I'll confess to you, that doesn't always happen. Because what the camera wants is sometimes different than what we want to look at in just a normal light setting.
I wanted to ask you something, but I think you just answered it, because what I hear you saying is that your profession really is a craft, right? If you, for example, have an off day without much inspiration, you could rely on techniques to achieve a good result, right?
Yes, I'll cop to that. I mean, I don't always have a great day. I'm lucky. I really love what I do. So coming to work is not a hardship. And I enjoy my clients. I'm busy. I'm productive. I make great money. So, I mean, like, there's a lot there that is very easy to ramp myself up with. But yeah, there are times when I'm leaning on one part of my skill set more than another. I'll cop to that. Yeah, true.
Yeah. Can you recall an example where you outdid yourself, where you took a great risk and the result was mind-blowing?
Yeah, I've changed some kids, but I've also, modified some people's hair I've changed some looks for people that have gone on to become iconic looks in fashion that have now been duplicated and other people are wearing it. And it's because I took a risk and said, no, we really need to do this. And again, that's usually working with Yves, because we'll get some media person and they look a certain way and we can convince them to go in a different direction. And it changes everything. I mean, their popularity, their Q numbers go off the chart, like everything change. Like the next thing you know, they're getting booked for stuff, for photos. Like, it's crazy. And it's because we changed the value of the hair color and the haircut. Yeah. It happens.
It must be so rewarding.
It is. It's also fun with kids. Like, I talk about that age group that's sort of like, adolescent-y up into college, and you do something with a color where they've been wanting to do it.
Experience at home, yeah.
Yeah. And I tell their parents, look, let them come to me. We can control it better. They'll be happy. It won't be some train wreck that you found in the kitchen sink. Like, and it's so successful, and they go to school and they've accomplished, they got the color they wanted. It looks like amazing. It does not look like the Friends train wreck. It's just, transformative. It gives them so much confidence that, like, they're making new friends and they're hanging out with different people. Like, it's transformative.
Yeah. I think we got to go to New York.
Listen, I have people that come from farther than you guys too. That's really? For sure. Yeah.
Hey, David, you studied something completely different before you followed your passion as hairstylist. What was the click or the moment that you dare to quit your path and follow your dream?
I grew up in a big family, and I'm old. I mean, I'm in my 60s, so I mean, I have to opt for that too. But when I was growing up, I don't think I was alone. Everybody wanted to get out of the house. We wanted to go pursue our fortunes, and I had interests in nature and trees, and I was also very interested in like how things were put together. So the engineering component led me out to the West Coast. And so that's how I got there. But what made me leave was I recognized how difficult that was going to be, and it wasn't really creative. I mean, like there were parts about engineering and stuff that I found gratifying, and I certainly loved learning about trees and stuff and being out in the forest, but it was not really feeding me correctly. So I started to take a ton of different things in school. I mean, I took everything from existentialism to child psychology to basket weaving, and as it turns out, I also became sort of like the house barber where I lived. And I really had a knack for it. I did everybody in the house, and I did their girlfriends, and then people in their house. Like it got to where I was cutting classes to do hair, and I thought nothing of it. And then circumstances arose where, I wasn't any happier at school, and some things were happening at home with some illness in my family. And I just said, it is time to change course. And so I did some research, and I made a proposal to my parents that I was going to come home and go to hair school, and how I was going to pay for it, how long it would take me, how I wanted to chart my course. And they were like, they signed on. And so that's how I came back and went to school. And within 3 or 4 months of graduating, I was in the city. And that's kind of how that happened. A long version.
Thank you very much for a wonderful insight into your world. We want to ask you to take a moment and please close your eyes and tell us, if you could only pick one, which color would you say best describes beauty?
That is not easy. But if you're talking about a color, so I'm going to say red.
Okay.
It's a primary color. It can be almost the color of black, and it can be as pale as the palest rose. And within that, it can be copper, it can be pink, it can be blue, it can be purple. So it really carries a lot of water.
Perfect. Thank you very much, David, for your time. And
you're welcome.
This was brilliant.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Ceci.
Thank you, Petra.
If anyone listening would like to meet David and experience his expertise, you can find him in Yves Durif's salon at the second floor of the iconic Carlyle Hotel in New York. You can find all information in his chapter description.
Thank you, Petra, and thanks to our listeners, wherever you are, for having allowed us to share time with you. We will see you next time. Have a good one.